a glass of water down the hallway when I heard her laugh. Not the laugh she used with me, not even close. This was softer, more private, the kind of laugh that has nothing to do with you and everything to do with someone else. I stopped walking. Just stopped. Right there in the hallway outside our bedroom door. The water in my glass going still. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. But our house isn't that big, and the door was cracked open about 6 inches. I know, she said. It's just, I don't even want to hug him anymore. Like, when he touches me, I just kind of tolerate it, you know? A pause, then that laugh again, soft, comfortable. The laugh of a woman who has already made up her mind about something. Of course I want to, I just have to be careful. He's not stupid. I stood there for what felt like a long time. My wife Donna was lying on our bed with her legs crossed at the ankles, feet swinging lazily in the air, her back to the door. She was on the phone. She was talking about me like I was a piece of furniture. She was thinking about replacing. I didn't move. I didn't breathe loud. I just stood there and let every single word sink in. The thing that hit me hardest wasn't even what she said. It was how she said it. That casual tone, that relaxed, unbothered voice. Like she wasn't blowing up 14 years of marriage. She was just chatting. Like I was a minor inconvenience she'd already mentally sorted out. My hand tightened around the glass. For one long second, I thought about walking in there, throwing the door open, standing in the doorway, watching her face go white, making her explain herself right then and there. But something stopped me. Not fear, not weakness. Something colder than either of those. I thought, if I walk in there right now, she'll cry. She'll apologize. She'll say it was nothing, and I'll spend the next 6 months arguing about something she'll never admit to fully. She'll feed me just enough to keep me in place while she keeps doing exactly what she's doing. No. I turned around, walked back down the hall, set my glass of water on the kitchen counter without making a sound, stood there for a minute, looking out the window at the backyard. Then I thought, okay, fine. Let's do this the right way. My name is Gary Hollis. I'm 53 years old. I've been a high school shop teacher for 22 years, wood shop, auto mechanics, basic electrical. I teach kids how to build things and how to fix things and how to understand the way systems work. I'm not dramatic. I'm not a hothead. I'm the kind of man who reads a problem carefully before he picks up a tool. Don and I had been married 14 years. No kids together. She had a daughter, Kaylee, from her first marriage. But Kaylee was 19 and in college out of state by this point. We had a house, 2 cars, a dog named Rusty, and what I had believed until approximately 7 minutes ago was a reasonably solid marriage. I thought about all of that standing in the kitchen. Then I thought, she said he's not stupid. She's right. He's not. I went to bed before she came out of the bedroom. I lay in the dark and I listened to her finish her call, heard her walking around, heard the bathroom sink run, heard her come to bed. She slid under the covers, sighed once, and went to sleep inside of 10 minutes. I stared at the ceiling until 2 in the morning. By the time the alarm went off, I had a plan. The first thing I did, and I mean the very first thing, before coffee, before anything, was stop. I stopped being the man she expected me to be. I stopped asking about her day. Stopped reaching for her hand at the movies. Stopped making the little gestures that husbands make without even thinking about it. The hand on the small of her back when we walked into a restaurant. The coffee made the way she liked it without being asked. The, "You okay?" when she seemed tired. I just stopped. And at first she didn't even notice. That first week, Donna was in her own world, texting with this little private smile on her face, humming while she got dressed in the morning, spending 20 minutes in the bathroom before bed when she used to spend 5. She was lit up from the inside, and it had nothing to do with me. And she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore because she didn't think she needed to. I watched all of it and said nothing. At dinner, I ate and looked at my plate. At night, I rolled to my side of the bed and stayed there. In the morning, I made my own coffee, ate my own breakfast, and left for work without saying much beyond "see you later." She thought I was tired, maybe stressed about something at school. That's what she told herself, I'm sure. Men get quiet sometimes. It doesn't mean anything. It took exactly 8 days before she started to feel it. I was rinsing out my coffee mug on a Thursday morning when she came into the kitchen and leaned against the counter. in that way she does when she wants to talk, but isn't sure how to start. "Hey," she said, "you okay?" I turned my head, looked right at her, and smiled. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" It was a genuine smile, that was the thing. Not forced, not sarcastic. Just empty. Polite the way you're polite to someone you barely know. She blinked. "I don't know. You've just been kind of quiet. Just been thinking about things." I turned back to the sink. She waited for me to say more. I didn't. I dried my hands, grabbed my keys off the counter, and walked out. I heard her standing there in the kitchen as I pulled the door shut behind me. Good. Let her stand there. Let her think about it. That's the thing about silence that most people don't understand. It's not passive. It's not the absence of something. Silence is a weight. You can use it to press on someone, slow and steady, until they can't breathe. Donna was used to having my full attention. She was used to being the center of my world, whether she deserved it or not. She was used to me asking, caring, noticing. And now, I wasn't doing any of those things, and she didn't know why. And she couldn't ask without admitting she'd noticed, which meant admitting she'd been taking it for granted in the first place. So she just had to sit with it. The second week was when the small things started to get to her. Friday night, I was already on the couch watching a movie when she got home. She stood in the doorway of the living room and looked at the TV, then at me. "You started without me. Didn't think you'd be interested." I didn't pause the movie, didn't scoot over, didn't even look away from the screen. She stood there for a second, then sat down at the far end of the couch with this awkward, stiff posture, like she was a guest in her own house, which, as far as I was concerned, she was. The next day I got home late, later than usual. She was in the kitchen when I came in, arms crossed, leaning against the counter. "Where were you?" I set my keys down. "Out." "Out where?" "Just out. Ran some errands, stopped and had a beer." "With who?" I met her eyes. My face gave her nothing. "Just some people." "What people?" "People I know, Donna." I walked past her into the living room. Behind me, I could feel her standing there, turning that over in her head, not liking the way it felt. She was used to knowing everything about my day. She was used to me volunteering it. Now I was giving her nothing, and she couldn't figure out why, and she didn't have the standing to push too hard because she was hiding something herself. She came to bed that night quieter than usual. I slept fine. By the third week, she was starting to come apart at the seams, just slightly. Not in any dramatic way. Donna was too controlled for that, at least at first. But I could see it in the little things. She'd ask me something and then ask it again 10 minutes later because she hadn't actually been listening to my answer. She'd start a sentence and trail off. She was distracted, and not in the good way she'd been distracted the first week. The guilt was starting to work on her. That, and the fact that the man she thought she had safely tucked in her back pocket was no longer behaving predictably. She tried to reconnect. That was the word for it, I guess. Reconnect. Like we'd just drifted apart naturally and she could fix it with a nice gesture. One evening, she came home with dinner from that Italian place I like. Set it out on the table, lit a candle, poured 2 glasses of wine. "Thought we could have a real dinner," she said, trying to sound casual about it. "Like we used to?" I looked at the table, looked at her. I actually already ate. I grabbed something after work. She stood there holding the wine bottle. "You didn't text me." Didn't think about it. I picked up my phone from the counter. "I'm going to finish this thing I was reading. The food's good, though. You should eat." I went to the living room. I sat there and listened to her in the kitchen, moving around, putting the food away, the quiet sounds of a woman eating alone at a table she'd set for 2. It's a specific kind of quiet, that. I recognized it because I'd been living in it for months without knowing why. Now she was getting a taste. Another night, she came into the living room with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses and set them on the coffee table like a peace offering. I looked up from my phone. "What's that?" "Thought we could have a drink together." She sat down, tucked her feet under her, tried to look relaxed. "We haven't in a while." I looked at the wine, looked at her. Then I stood up and stretched. "I'm heading to bed," I said. "Early morning tomorrow." I watched her face do something complicated. The disappointment hit first, then she tried to cover it, but she wasn't fast enough. "Oh," she said, "just that." Okay. I went to bed, lay there in the dark. listening to her sit alone in the living room with 2 glasses of wine. Heard the TV come on, then go off again after about 20 minutes. Heard the cabinet open and close as she put the glasses away. Then she came to bed, and she lay there on her side and she didn't say anything. I stared at the ceiling and I thought, she's starting to understand. She was starting to feel what it felt like to be irrelevant to the person sleeping next to you, to reach out and get nothing back, to be tolerated. I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The confirmation came on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks after I'd heard her in the hallway. I was in bed reading when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She was in the bathroom. I could hear the water running. The screen lit up and I could see the preview without touching it. Tonight was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. The contact name was just the letter M. I looked at it for a moment. My pulse didn't even spike. I'd already known. This was just the paperwork. She came out of the bathroom towel drying her hair, completely unaware. The screen had gone dark again. She picked up her phone, checked it, and I watched her face do this small, private thing. A tiny softening around the eyes, a barely there smile, before she locked the screen and set it face down on the nightstand. "You tired?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, "no, long day." I turned my light off. She got into bed. We lay there in the dark, not touching, and she had no idea that everything had just changed. The next morning, she left for work, and I called in sick. I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop and a cup of coffee, and I got to work. Step 1. Figure out who M was. I pulled up our phone bill online. I have access to the account, always have. We set it up together years ago. I looked at her call and text history for the past 3 months. One number showed up over and over, late evenings mostly, some during the day, consistent as a heartbeat. I ran the number. It took about 4 minutes. His name was Michael Garrett. He was 38, so about 10 years younger than Donna. He worked at a consulting firm that did business with her company. That explained how they'd met. I found his LinkedIn profile, his Facebook, his Instagram. He was the kind of guy who posted photos of himself at rooftop bars and on ski trips. Expensive haircut, the smile of a man who's never had to work too hard for anything. I looked at his photos for a while. He had a wife. Her name was Patricia. They had a golden retriever in a house in a suburb, about 40 minutes from ours. Patricia had her own Instagram, mostly the dog, some hiking photos, a few from what looked like a work trip to Portland. She looked like a normal person, a real person. She had no idea. I felt something for her. Not pity exactly, more like recognition. She was me 2 months ago. She just didn't know it yet. I closed the laptop and sat there for a minute. Then I picked up my phone and called a private investigator. His name was Ray Decker, a guy in his mid-60s who worked out of a small office above a tax prep place downtown. I'd heard his name from a colleague at school whose brother had used him during a custody dispute. He was recommended as thorough, discreet, and not cheap. I drove over that afternoon. His office smelled like old coffee and printer ink. He had a framed photo of a German shepherd on his desk and a whiteboard covered in what looked like a schedule, written in different colored markers. "Sit down," he said, not looking up from something he was writing. "Tell me what you need." I told him. He asked a few questions. How long had I suspected? What evidence did I already have? What did I want from him specifically? He wasn't warm about it, but he wasn't cold either. He was just professional, which is what I needed. "Photos, timestamps, locations," I said. "I want documentation. I want it to be airtight." "You going to use it in court?" "Possibly, also personally." He nodded like that was a perfectly reasonable answer. 2 weeks, maybe less. I'll be in touch. I wrote him a check and drove home. That evening, Donna made pasta for dinner and asked me how my day was, and I said fine. And we ate in near silence, and she had no idea that the clock had started. Ray Decker was good at his job. It took him 9 days. He sent me a secure link to a folder. I opened it at my kitchen table on a Sunday morning while Donna was at the gym. Photos, timestamps. A hotel on the east side of the city. The Meridian. A mid-range business hotel. Michael Garrett's car in the parking lot. Donna's car. The two of them walking in together through a side entrance. The two of them leaving separately about 2 hours later. 4 different dates over the past 3 weeks alone. There were also screenshots of text messages. Ray had gotten those through channels he didn't explain and I didn't ask about. I read through them slowly. Can't stop thinking about last night. Me either. When can I see you again? Thursday? Gary has that teacher thing. Gary has that teacher thing. I sat with that one for a while. I had a district professional development day on the second Thursday of every month. She knew my schedule better than I did. She'd been using it as a planning tool. I closed the folder, sat there, finished my coffee. I thought about calling my brother Pete, who lives in Columbus. I thought about calling my friend Dale, who I've known since we were in our 20s. I thought about telling someone, just to say it out loud to another human being. But I didn't. Not yet. Not until I was ready to move. I printed everything out that afternoon while she was at her sister's place, organized it into a manila envelope, photos in order by date, text screenshots behind them, phone bill records in the back. Then I put the envelope in my truck under the seat and I waited. She tried one more time to reach me that week. I'll give her credit for persistence. Saturday night, she sat down next to me on the couch, closer than she'd been in weeks, and she had this careful, tentative look on her face, like she was about to say something she'd been rehearsing. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." She was quiet for a second, then, "I feel like we've been off lately, like there's this distance between us." I looked at her. My face was completely neutral. "I guess," I said, I don't want that." She looked down at her hands. "I don't want us to drift apart. I really don't." There was a version of me, the version from 6 months ago, the version who had no idea what was happening, who would have felt something hearing that. Relief, maybe. Hope. Instead, I felt nothing except a very clear awareness that she was scared. Not of losing me exactly, of losing the stability I represented. The house, the life, the safe landing pad she'd been counting on while she played her little game on the side. But I didn't show any of that. I let my face do something soft, something that looked like warmth. "I don't want that either," I said. Her shoulders dropped about an inch. She almost smiled. She thought she'd gotten somewhere. "Okay," she said quietly. "Good." I nodded, reached over and patted her hand once, then went back to watching TV. She sat there for another hour, relaxed for the first time in weeks, thinking she'd pulled us back from the edge. She had no idea that tomorrow night was the night. I waited until she was getting ready for bed. She was in the bathroom, brushing her teeth, the door open, the light spilling out into the bedroom. I could hear the faucet, the small domestic sounds of a woman doing her nighttime routine without a care in the world. I took the envelope out of my nightstand drawer. I'd moved it there that morning, and I set it on her pillow. Then I sat down on my side of the bed and waited. She came out of the bathroom in her robe, towel around her hair, and she was humming something under her breath. She walked around to her side of the bed, reached for the covers, and stopped. She looked at the envelope. Then she looked at me. "What's this?" I didn't say anything. She picked it up. I watched her hands. They were steady when she first touched it. But as soon as she felt the weight of it, felt the thickness, something changed in her body language. She became careful, slow. She opened the flap. She slid the photos out. The first one she looked at for a long time. Long enough that I knew she was hoping she was wrong about what she was seeing. Then she flipped to the next one, and the next. Her breathing changed, got shallower, quicker. She went through the text screenshots. She got to the phone bill records in the back. Then she stopped. She stood there holding the envelope, not moving, and the room was completely silent except for the sound of the ceiling fan. Finally, she looked up at me. Her face was the color of old paper. "Where did you—" Her voice cracked. She stopped, tried again. "How did you—" She didn't finish either sentence. She already knew it didn't matter. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, and I looked at her for a long moment. Really looked at her. This woman I'd shared a bed with for 14 years. Then I said very quietly, "You don't have to hug me anymore." She flinched like I'd thrown something at her. You said you tolerate it when I touch you, I said. So you don't have to do that anymore. You're free. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I'm not going to yell, I said. I'm not going to call you names. I'm not going to beg you to explain yourself. I kept my voice level, almost gentle. I don't need any of that, because I don't care anymore. That last part landed like I knew it would. She'd been bracing for anger. She'd been ready for a fight. The screaming, the accusations, the desperate, how could you, that she probably had a whole set of responses prepared for. She knew how to handle a man who was furious. She'd done it before, with her first husband. What she didn't know how to handle was a man who was done. Her eyes filled up. Her fingers tightened on the envelope until the edges bent. Gary, get some sleep, I said. I turned off my bedside lamp and lay down with my back to her. She stood there for a long time. I could feel her standing there, trying to figure out what to do, what to say, how to get a handhold on a conversation that had just ended before it started. Eventually, she got into bed. She didn't sleep. I could tell by her breathing. She lay there in the dark for hours, and I lay there on my side of the bed. And the silence between us was about 14 inches wide and roughly the size of everything she'd thrown away. I slept fine. The next few days were something to watch. She tried the explanation route first. That was predictable. She came into the kitchen the morning after with this careful, composed look. She'd clearly been up most of the night rehearsing, and she started talking before I'd even finished pouring my coffee. I need you to understand, she said. It wasn't what you think. It wasn't some big thing. It wasn't Donna. I turned around and looked at her. I have 4 dates, 2 hours each, same hotel. I have 3 months of texts. Don't do this. She stopped. It was a mistake, she said, quieter now. The composure was already cracking. I wasn't thinking clearly. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear to God, I didn't. How long? She looked at me. What? How long was it going on? She looked at the floor. Her jaw moved. About 4 months. I nodded slowly. 4 months of mistakes, I said. That's a lot of mistakes. It wasn't. She looked up and her eyes were wet now. It wasn't like that. It wasn't about you. It wasn't about anything being wrong with us. It was just, I don't know, I got confused. Donna. I picked up my coffee and my keys. Stop. You're not going to explain your way out of this. There's no version of this conversation that ends differently. I walked to the door. Gary, please. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. Didn't turn around. I'll be late tonight, I said. Don't wait up. I went to work. She called me twice that day. I let both calls go to voicemail. Didn't listen to the messages. When I got home that evening, she was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine and red eyes. She looked like she hadn't moved much since I'd left. I made a sandwich, took it to the living room, and watched the news. She came and stood in the doorway. Can we please talk? About what? About what happens now. She pressed her lips together. About whether there's anything we can do. I looked at the TV. I don't think so. You don't think so. Her voice went tight. That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? I want you to. She stopped, pressed her hand to her forehead. I want you to get angry. I want you to yell at me. I want you to, I don't know, do something, feel something, because this. She gestured at the space between us. This is killing me. I looked at her for a moment. I know, I said. Then I looked back at the TV. She made a sound that wasn't quite a word and went back to the kitchen. I heard her crying a little while later. Real crying. Not the performative kind. The kind that sounds like it's being pulled out of you against your will. I sat there and watched the news and didn't move. She'd wanted me to feel nothing when she touched me. Now I felt nothing, period. Seemed fair. The next week was more of the same, just louder on her end. She kept making these small gestures, making my coffee, asking if I wanted dinner, sitting near me on the couch, and I kept not responding the way she wanted. I'd pour the coffee down the sink. I'd order my own food. I'd get up and go to another room. Each one landed. I could see it. She made a dinner reservation at a place I liked and told me about it over breakfast, casual as she could manage. I thought maybe we could go out Saturday, she said. That steakhouse you always wanted to try. I'm busy Saturday. Doing what? Things. I folded my newspaper. You should cancel the reservation. She stared at me. Gary, I'm trying here. I see that. Then why won't you? Because trying now doesn't change what you did then. I stood up, put my plate in the sink. That's just how it works, Donna. I went to get my jacket. I talked to my friend Linda about it, she said behind me, and something in her voice made me stop. She's been going through something similar. Her husband, she found out last year that he'd been, anyway. She's been using this app for meeting people when she's ready. She said it's different from the usual stuff. I turned around slowly. What? It's called singletune.com. Donna was looking at her coffee cup, not at me. Linda said it's not like the swiping apps. You do this whole values assessment before you see anyone's profile. Questions about what you believe in, what you've been through, what you actually want from a relationship. It matches you based on that, not on photos. She paused. She said it made her feel like there were still decent people out there. After everything. I stood there looking at my wife, my cheating wife, telling me about a dating app. The irony was almost funny. Good for Linda, I said, and walked out. But I thought about it on the drive to work, not the app itself, exactly. More what she'd said about it. A values assessment. Questions about what you believe in, what you've been through. I thought, what do I believe in? What have I been through? I pushed it aside. I had other things to focus on. The week after that, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to a divorce attorney named Carol Finch, whose office was in a brick building on the north side of town. She was recommended by a teacher at my school whose divorce had been handled efficiently and without drama. I sat across from her desk and told her the situation in plain terms. She asked a few questions. She was direct, which I appreciated. Do you have documentation of the infidelity? Yes. What's the status of marital assets? I told her. House, 2 cars, joint savings account, my pension. Ohio is a no-fault state, she said, but documented infidelity can influence asset division, particularly if you can demonstrate financial harm, shared funds used for the affair, that sort of thing. I thought about the hotel, the Meridian, mid-range, but not cheap. I thought about Donna's credit card statements, which I also had access to. I'll look into that, I said. Carol gave me a list of things to gather and told me to call her when I was ready to move forward. The second phone call was to Patricia Garrett. I want to be clear about why I made that call. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't strategy. It was the fact that I had sat in Ray Decker's office and looked at those photos of Michael Garrett's wife, the hiking trips, the golden retriever, the normal life, and I had thought, she deserves to know. The same way I deserve to know. I called her on a Wednesday afternoon. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? Patricia Garrett? Yes, who is this? My name is Gary Hollis. I don't know you, but I think we're in the same situation, and I think you have a right to know what I know. Silence, then quietly, tell me. I told her. I kept it factual. Dates, locations, the hotel name. I told her I had documentation and that I'd send it to her if she wanted it. Another silence. Longer this time. How long? She finally asked. At least 4 months that I can document. She made a sound. Not crying exactly. More like the sound of something settling into place. The sound of a suspicion becoming a fact. I had a feeling, she said. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. You weren't. No. A pause. Thank you for calling. I know that wasn't easy. It wasn't hard either, I said honestly. You deserve to know. Are you okay? It was a strange question from a stranger. I thought about it for a second. I'm getting there, I said. We said goodbye. I sent her the documentation that evening. I don't know exactly what happened after that. I heard some things through mutual acquaintances later on. But I know Patricia Garrett was not a woman who would sit quietly with that information. That was her business. My part was done. The blow-up came about 10 days after I'd shown Donna the envelope. I was in the living room reading when she came in from the kitchen. I could hear her before she got there. The energy was different, tighter, like a wire pulled too taut. She stood in the doorway and she looked at me and her eyes were red, but her jaw was set. Are you seriously just going to ignore me forever? She said. Her voice was shaking. Is that the plan? Just silence forever until I what? Disappear? I looked up from my book. I'm not ignoring you. I'm sitting right here. You know what I mean. She stepped into the room. You won't fight with me. You won't argue. You just look at me like I'm nothing and go back to whatever you're doing and I can't. Her voice broke. She pressed her hand over her mouth for a second, then pulled it away. Why won't you just yell at me? Why won't you get angry? I set my book down. Because you don't deserve my anger, I said. Anger means I still care enough to be angry. You don't get that from me anymore. She stared at me. Her eyes were filling up. You don't deserve my time either, I said, keeping my voice even. What you did, it wasn't a mistake, Donna. A mistake is something that happens once and you're horrified by it. This was 4 months. This was planning. This was lying to my face over and over again, while I was just living my life, thinking everything was fine. I picked my book back up. So no, I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to make this into some dramatic thing that we both cry about and then try to work through. That's not where we are. Then where are we? I looked at her over the top of my book. We're at the end, I said. We've been at the end for a while. You just didn't know it. She stood there. A tear ran down her face and she didn't wipe it. I was stupid, she said, and yeah. I thought, she stopped, swallowed. I thought you'd always just be here. That no matter what I did, you'd still want to fix it. I know you thought that. I was wrong. Yes, I said. You were. She left the room. I heard her go upstairs. I heard her crying up there for a while. Real crying. The kind that shakes your whole chest. I sat in the living room and read my book, and I felt nothing that I hadn't already made peace with. I called Carol Finch the next morning and told her I was ready to move forward. I gave myself 2 more weeks in the house. I wanted to do it right. Not a dramatic midnight disappearance, not a screaming exit, just a clean, quiet departure. During those 2 weeks, I sorted through my things. I'm not a man with a lot of stuff, which made it easier. I arranged to rent a 2-bedroom apartment about 3 miles away. Ground floor, small yard for Rusty, which I was taking. I told my brother Pete what was happening. I told my friend Dale. I told Carol Finch to file the papers. I didn't tell Donna any of this. She was still trying. That was the word for it. Trying. Making dinners I didn't eat. Suggesting things I didn't respond to. Coming to sit near me in the evenings with this careful, hopeful posture, like a dog that's been scolded and wants to know if it's forgiven yet. I wasn't cruel about it. I just wasn't there for it. One evening, about a week before I left, I was sitting on the back porch after dinner. Just sitting, watching Rusty nose around the yard. It was a warm night, getting dark slowly the way it does in late spring, the sky going orange and then purple over the tree line. My phone was on the armrest, and I was half looking at it, half not, and I thought about what Donna had said, about her friend Linda, about singletune.com. I picked up my phone and looked it up. The website was simple, clean design. The first thing you saw wasn't photos or profiles. It was a question. What do you believe in? And below that, smaller. Built for people who've been through real life. Values-based matching. For people who've been through loss, divorce, or betrayal. I sat there on the porch with my phone in my hand and read that for a minute. For people who've been through real life. I thought, that's me. That's exactly me. I wasn't ready for any of that yet. I knew that. I wasn't anywhere near ready. But something about that line, the plainness of it, the way it didn't pretend that everyone coming to it was starting from zero, something about that felt honest. Like someone had built a thing for the version of yourself that comes out the other side of a thing like this. The version that still exists, that still has things to offer, that just needs to find the right place to offer them. I put my phone down. Rusty trotted over and put his chin on my knee. Just you and me for a while, bud, I said. He wagged his tail. I scratched his ears and watched the sky go dark. The last day came on a Saturday. I'd loaded most of my things into my truck over the previous few days while Donna was at work. Boxes in the truck bed, covered with a tarp. Nothing dramatic. I left the furniture, left most of the kitchen stuff, left things that were hers or that we'd bought together. I took my tools, my books, my clothes, Rusty's bed and bowls and leash, and a framed photo of my parents that had always been on my nightstand. That Saturday afternoon I came back for the last few things. My grandfather's watch that had been in the top drawer of the dresser, a jacket I'd almost forgotten, Rusty himself. Donna's car was in the driveway when I pulled up. I hadn't planned for that. She usually spent Saturday afternoons at her sister's place. I went inside. She was in the kitchen. She turned when she heard the door and looked at me, then at Rusty's leash in my hand, then at me again. "Gary." Her voice was very quiet. "What's happening?" I didn't answer. I went upstairs, got the watch and the jacket, came back down. Rusty was already at my heels, tail wagging, sensing that something was different. She was standing in the hallway when I came back down. She looked smaller than I remembered. Tired. "Where are you going?" she asked. Are you leaving?" I clipped the leash onto Rusty's collar. "Gary." She stepped toward me. Her hands came up, not quite reaching for me. Can we please just talk? One real conversation, I looked at her, and I thought about 14 years. About the house we'd bought together, the vacations, the ordinary Tuesday evenings that make up most of a life. I thought about standing in the hallway with a glass of water, hearing her voice go soft for someone who wasn't me. I thought about Gary has that teacher thing. I thought about 4 months. I thought about Patricia Garrett, who'd said, "Thank you for calling," in a voice that sounded exactly like how I'd felt. I thought about Rusty putting his chin on my knee on the back porch, and the sky going purple over the trees, and a website that asked, "What do you believe in?" and meant it. "We already did talk," I said. We had the conversation. "It's done." She looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were shining. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm really sorry, Gary." "I know you are," I said. "That's not the same as it being okay." I picked up my last bag, opened the front door. Rusty walked out ahead of me, tail up, nose into the breeze. I stepped out after him. I didn't look back. Not because I was being dramatic about it. I just didn't feel the need to. There was nothing back there I needed to see. The story was over. The chapter was closed. All that was ahead of me was the next thing, whatever that turned out to be. I put Rusty in the truck. I got in. I started the engine. I drove away. The apartment was small and smelled like fresh paint, and it was completely mine. I set Rusty's bed in the corner of the living room and his bowls in the kitchen, and I stood in the middle of the space and just breathed for a minute. My brother Pete called that evening. "You out?" he asked. "Yeah, I'm out." "How do you feel?" I thought about it honestly. "Like I just put down something really heavy," I said. "Like I've been carrying it so long I forgot what it felt like to not be carrying it." "Good," Pete said. "That's good, Gary." We talked for a while. He offered to drive up, help me get settled. I told him maybe next weekend. We made tentative plans. After I hung up, I sat on the floor of my mostly empty living room. I didn't have a couch yet, with Rusty's head in my lap, and I ate a sandwich from the deli down the street, and I watched the light change in the windows as the evening came on. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text came through from a number I didn't recognize. "Gary, it's Donna. I got a new phone. Please just call me. I just need to talk to you. 5 minutes." I looked at it. Then I blocked the number. The divorce papers had been filed. Carol Finch had them. Donna had been served. The legal machinery was in motion, and there was nothing left to negotiate through informal channels. Whatever Donna needed to say, she could say it through her attorney. I was done being the audience for her regret. A few weeks later, I ran into my friend Dale at the hardware store. Dale is one of those guys who's been my friend for so long that he can read my face like a road map. And he took one look at me in the power tool aisle and said, "You look better." "I feel better," I said. "Yeah?" He grabbed a package of drill bits off the shelf. "You eating, sleeping?" "Both. Rusty's good. The apartment's good. Work is good." "You seeing anyone?" "Dale." "I'm just asking. It's been 6 weeks." I know. He held up a hand. "I'm not pushing, I'm just saying. You're not the kind of guy who should be alone long term. You're a good man, Gary. There are women out there who'd be lucky to have that." I shook my head, but I was almost smiling. "Talk to me in a year. I'm serious. My neighbor, you remember Wendy, I've mentioned her. Dale, Fine. He dropped it. We walked toward the checkout together. You heard anything about Donna? Not much. Carol tells me what she needs to tell me. That's enough. I heard she and that guy, I know, it didn't last. I had heard the same thing, that Michael Garrett and Donna had tried to make a go of it after everything fell apart, and that it had lasted approximately 2 weeks before he'd retreated back to whatever remained of his own life. Patricia Garrett had filed for divorce. From what I understood, she was getting a very favorable settlement. Good for her. She called me, Dale said. Donna did, about a month ago. I looked at him. What did she say? She wanted to know how you were, whether you were okay, whether you were... He paused. Whether you'd said anything about her. What did you tell her? I told her you seemed fine and that I wasn't going to be her back channel to you. He said it matter-of-factly, no drama. She cried a little. I felt bad, but not that bad. I appreciate that, I said, and I meant it. We paid for our things and walked out to the parking lot together. It was a nice day, early fall, that particular quality of light that makes everything look a little sharper and cleaner. For what it's worth, Dale said, stopping at his truck, I always thought you were too good for her. I never said it because you were happy, and when your friend is happy, you don't say that. But I thought it. You could have mentioned it. Would you have listened? I thought about it. No. Exactly. He opened his truck door. Buy yourself a couch, Gary. Get a real couch. That's my advice. That's your advice. You'd be surprised how much better life feels when you have a place to sit. I laughed. First real laugh I'd had in a while. It felt good. I did buy a couch, as it turned out. Dark gray, wide enough to stretch out on, good and solid. I put it in the living room, facing the window that looked out over the small yard, and I sat on it with Rusty that first evening and watched the light fade and felt something that I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Just plain, ordinary peace. I wasn't happy yet. I want to be honest about that. Happy takes time, and I wasn't going to rush it or fake it. But I was okay. I was genuinely, solidly okay. And after everything, that felt like more than enough. The divorce was finalized 4 months after I'd walked out the door. Carol Finch was efficient, and the settlement was fair. The documentation of the affair helped, as she'd suggested it might. I kept my pension intact. We split the house equity. I walked away with enough to be comfortable, and not $1 more than I was owed. Donna tried to reach me one more time through a mutual acquaintance, a woman named Barb, who we'd both known from the neighborhood. Barb called me on a Sunday and said, a little awkwardly, that Donna had asked her to pass along that she'd like to talk, that she had some things she needed to say. Barb, I said, I appreciate you calling. Tell Donna I wish her well and that there's nothing left to say. Barb was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Okay, Gary, I'll tell her. I don't know what Donna did with that. I don't know how she's doing now, not really. I hear things occasionally, the way you do in a town where you've lived for 20 years. I know she's still in the house. I know she's still at the same job. I know she and Michael Garrett are long done. I don't spend much time thinking about it. What I spend time thinking about is the future. My future. The specific, concrete shape of a life that belongs entirely to me. I started a woodworking class at the community center. Teaching it, actually, Saturday mornings, adults only. It's something I'd been thinking about doing for years and never got around to. The class filled up in 2 days. I've got 12 students, ranging from a 25-year-old who wants to build furniture to a 70-year-old retired postal worker named Herb, who just wants to make birdhouses. Herb is my favorite student. He's not particularly good at it yet, but he shows up every single week, and he pays attention, and he doesn't get discouraged when something doesn't work the first time. He just looks at it, figures out what went wrong, and tries again. I like that about him. One Saturday after class, a few of the students stuck around to help clean up, and we got to talking. There was a woman named Carol Ann Briggs, no relation to my attorney, who taught middle school English and had been divorced for about 2 years. She was funny and direct and had this way of saying exactly what she meant, without making it feel like a confrontation. She'd mentioned, a few weeks earlier, that she'd started dating again. Cautiously, she said. Very cautiously. How are you meeting people? Asked another student, a guy named Frank, who was recently separated, and clearly thinking about the same question for himself. Honestly, Carol Ann said, putting a push broom against the wall, I tried one of the regular apps and lasted about 4 days. It was just exhausting. Swiping through photos, everyone presenting this perfect version of themselves. She shook her head. I'm 51 years old. I've been through a divorce. I don't have the patience for that. So, what are you doing? Frank asked. A friend told me about this thing called singletune.com. She said it simply, not like she was recommending it or selling it, just answering the question. It's different from the usual stuff. Before you see any profiles, you do this whole assessment. Not a personality quiz, more like real questions. What matters to you? What you've been through? What you actually want from your life at this point? She paused, considering. It takes a while, like a real while. But when you're done, you feel like whoever you end up talking to actually knows something real about you before you've said a word. Does it work? Frank asked. Carol Ann smiled. I've had 2 conversations with people through it. Both times the conversation felt real. Not like a first date, more like talking to someone who already understood the basic context. She shrugged. Whether it leads anywhere, I don't know yet. But it's the first time I've felt hopeful about any of this. I was wiping down a workbench, and I wasn't saying anything, just listening. But I heard it. The first time I felt hopeful about any of this. I thought about that on the drive home, about what it would mean to feel hopeful, about the values assessment, the idea that before you met anyone, you had to sit down and answer real questions about who you were and what you'd been through and what you were looking for. I thought, I know exactly who I am. I know what I believe in. I know what I've been through. Maybe someday that would be worth something to someone. Not yet, but someday. I'm not in a hurry. That's the thing I keep coming back to. I spent 14 years in a marriage that was, for at least part of it, good. And then it wasn't, and I survived that, and I came out the other side with my dignity and my dog and a gray couch and a Saturday morning woodworking class and a friendship with a 70-year-old man who makes birdhouses. That's not nothing. That's actually quite a lot. Donna wanted space. She wanted excitement. She wanted to be free of the ordinary, steady, reliable weight of a man who came home every night and fixed things when they were broken and loved her without making a production of it. She got all of that. I hope it was worth it to her. I genuinely do in the detached, distant way that I hope things are okay for people I used to know. I don't wish her harm. I don't think about her enough anymore to wish her anything much at all. That's the real ending, I think. Not the dramatic exit, not the evidence in the envelope, not even the phone calls or the attorney or the signed papers. The real ending is the morning I woke up in my apartment, in my bed, with Rusty snoring at the foot of it, and I lay there looking at the ceiling and I realized I hadn't thought about Donna in 3 days. 3 whole days. I got up, made coffee, stood at my kitchen window looking out at the yard where the leaves were starting to turn, drank my coffee, thought about what I wanted to do that day. Just that. Just what I wanted to do. That's what winning looks like, I think. Not revenge exactly, and though I'd be lying if I said the look on her face when she opened that envelope hadn't been satisfying. Not justice exactly, though the settlement had been fair. Just this. A quiet morning, a cup of coffee, a dog at your feet, and a future that belongs entirely to you. She thought she had me figured out. She thought I was predictable, manageable, the kind of man who would either blow up or fall apart. She was wrong about that. She was wrong about a lot of things.